But also keep in mind, he did inflate the size of his penthouse by several hundred square feet, which, I mean, the guy should know how big his penthouse is. And so if he's lying about how big it is, that's probably, I mean, I know he's a guy. We lie about how big it is, but still.
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate.
Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 35 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and the gang's all together again, a couple weeks in a row. Next week, not so much. But how's it going, Jay? Good to see you, buddy.
It is going well. I just had some coffee and haven't eaten all day, so I'm bouncing off the walls, and I'm excited for this episode.
Hopefully it's not just coffee. What else are you drinking?
I am drinking. So sadly, a good friend of mine passed away a couple weeks ago. We did a celebration of life last week. He is a big fan of the Spanish Reds, or he was a big fan of the Spanish Reds. So we bought a couple cases of Rioja, not Costco, in this case, Trader Joe's.
Wow. Moving up in the world, Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's. So this one's in Ozzy's honor for this week.
Do we sell a property I don't know about or something, Jay? Jeez, big spender.
Well, when you're buying like 5 cases of wine for a few hundred people, like you got to go economical.
Mauricio, how's it going over there? Are you alive?
I'm barely alive, man. I'm sick. I've been, but you know what? My dedication to the show is unparalleled, and so I'm here, at least in person. I don't know if I'm here in spirit, but I'm here physically. But it's all good. I had this is something that happened today. I'll just show you guys. That was nice. It kind of got my spirits up today. I got one of these today in my car. Do you guys know what this is?
You got a Jeep?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a Jeep thing.
Yeah, it's my second one. This is when I got this one after I got busted out of the World Series of Poker a couple years ago, Jay.
So for anybody that's watching or that's not watching, just listening, he's holding up these little rubber duckies.
I thought you guys weren't going to know, so I was going to make it a contest and people could comment on comment what they were. But yeah, so it's a Jeep thing. So if somebody really likes your Jeep or whatever, they'll put one of these on your windshield or in this case, it was in the door handle. And so I got my second one today. So
my daughter has a Jeep. I just learned about that. I had no idea that was a thing. And she's like, Dad, I got to go get a bunch of rubber duckies. I'm like, why? And she's like, I got to put them on people's Jeeps because they put them on mine. And I'm like, who's putting what on your Jeeps? What's going on? And I'm like,
young girls get the rubber duckies more often than I do on my Jeep, I guess.
So is that a green one, Mauricio? Because you know what the green ones mean. No,
what does the green ones mean?
It means you're parking like an idiot.
Oh, that could be true. Is that really what it means? That could definitely be true. I don't. This is the old one. No, I got this one today. But anyway, so that made my day. And then don't forget, I was telling you guys before the show, National Love Your Pet Day today. So hopefully you guys are loving on your pets more than usual. But today is National Love Your Pet Day.
Every day is National Love Your Pet Day.
It is in my house.
So Maurice, are you taking the night off drinking then, or are you?
I am drinking a 2024. How do you pronounce it, Jay? Cranberry Waterloo, whatever this is. Natural sparkling water.
Oh, sparkling. The good stuff.
Burns so good going down.
Kyle wanted me to put some vodka in it, but I figured it was... I'm also traveling in 2 days again, so...
Little piece of trivia for you. If you ever want to get drunk faster, mix your alcohol with something that's carbonated.
Like champagne?
Like champagne or soda.
There you go. Best tidbit of the episode right there. All right, AJ, how's it going, man? Good of you to show up. A couple minutes late today, as usual.
4. Was it 5 maybe?
Gee, they give this guy a hard time.
We got to count when you actually show up, not when your assistant logs on and we get to see the background of you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's different then. Yeah, I was about to say, I'm never late. Well, I mean, they're not late. I am. They're not. So.
We're moving the show. We're going to start recording 10 minutes earlier. I don't know if you know that or not, but starting next week, we start 10 minutes. It's actually, I think,
10 minutes early.
Yeah, that's when we start the show next week.
Okay, I'll be there.
How's it going, buddy? Everything good?
Yeah, it's going good. Just got back from Vegas. And so, yeah, it's Vegas.
You a gambler?
No, I'm not a gambler. I'm already an investor. I mean,
Fountain Coke again tonight?
Am I gambling tonight?
No, Fountain Coke. Are you drinking your Fountain Coke tonight?
Oh, of course. Diet Coke, Fountain? Yeah. It's the
I don't know,
best.
for a little while there, you were switching up with the energy drinks. We were getting different colors and stuff. I was kind of excited, and now you're just red Solo cup.
It's so good. Fountain drinks are the best. I'm sorry, I'm totally addicted to it. I love it.
Do you allow them to buy blue Solo cups, or are you only red? Is it just only red in your office?
I have no say in those things, so I just grab what's ever there.
Kyle, what are you drinking?
I'm going back with, I'm trying the Crosswater again, the Crosswater bourbon. They're the ones who partner with those guys that we invest in, and it was a little harsh first time, but I thought I'd give it a second try. You know, give them a good one. I'm still hurting kind of. I hung out with the dog pack again last weekend.
Oh my goodness, we're going back on the dogs. This episode's going to have half the amount of listeners than last episode because we lost half of our audience based on your.
But it wasn't the full pack though. It kept it to two of them. It was just the two Ashleys together, so it was manageable. But it was still quite a few nights in a row of drinking. So I should have taken today off. Let's get into this. How many times do we want to talk about the election this episode?
All of them.
No, all of them. All right, let's start with the election. So markets these days, they seem pretty hyper focused on the Fed and the economic releases that affect the policies from the Fed, but political news, whenever there's political news, it doesn't seem to really move the needle at all. And the fact that we have an election coming up, it can't be ignored. And in the next few months, it's really going to start hitting us pretty hard. So AJ, why don't you hit us with some stats of what we should be paying attention economy-wise with the election getting closer?
Wait, AJ's leading the episode off?
I knew it. I knew Mauricio would be so happy about that.
Is this a first? Is this a first?
I knew Mauricio was going to be excited about that.
35 episodes in and AJ's leading with it? Wow, that's awesome.
It's the first time he's done an economic topic.
If you're leading a topic, I want you to be a little bit sober. And so usually that's why I put you and Jay first, because I can't risk in the third topic someone trying to intro it when they're half drunk. So I always put AJ last. So that's, there's a little backstory.
Now, I think a lot of people think that like the political landscape changes the economy like super fast, like it's like a light switch or something, which is obviously not how it works. In election years, I think there's a lot of turmoil, but that doesn't seem to transcend to the economy. And in fact, when you actually look in the past during election years, so when you can pair presidential election years versus non-presidential election years, in just like a normal even bond portfolio, presidential years outperform with the stock and bond portfolio non-election years. And this is very true and consistent.
Is this AJ, is that the 60-40 portfolio? Like 60% equity?
Traditional 60-40 portfolio. In fact, the S&P 500 gained in almost all the elections since 1928, 83%, which is incredible. 83% of the 24 election years since 1928, the S&P has gained. And two, it's gained quite a bit. I mean, these weren't small gains. I mean, you had very substantial. In fact, some of the largest gains that they've had have been in election years. And it doesn't seem to transcend to what people are usually feeling. I mean, sentiment lots of times is usually very down. There's lots of turmoil. There's lots of negative press, everything else. But the back end, financially speaking, we actually tend to see great results from financial assets and from the economy as a whole. And I think there's a few reasons for that. But I think the main thing is there's a pretty big disparity between what people think is happening versus actually happening. And I think the market also rewards change a lot of the time. Like it's ready for change. It wants change. It's like an injection of hope into the market. But the election is really known, meaning, or the election outcomes are pretty consistent due to the economy. So let's not like outside the election years, overall economic performance, how things are going. At the end of the day, if you are in a recession, you're not getting reelected. So presidents that are in recessions don't get reelected. Now, if there's no recessions 2 years before the election, you are an incumbent, you're reelected.
And just to put a finer point on that, like the data is, if you go back 110 years, every single election where an incumbent was up for re-election, if there was a recession in the previous 2 years before the election, they did not get reelected. 100% of the time, if there was no recession in the previous 2 years, they did get reelection. So no exceptions.
It is the strongest input there is to know what will happen. Like, Trump was doomed. Trump was not going to get reelected. It's really interesting, though, because I think it's very much missed by Main Street as well. People, what you find is during election years, Main Street, in fact, will lots of times pull back. So we see people get more conservative. They're like, oh, there's so much unknown, right? That's not true, though, with outcomes. That's also not true with institutions. And it's a very clear indicator of Main Street versus Wall Street, so to speak. Another thing that happens, and I want to make sure is very clear, I'm not talking about the Fed, okay? We're not talking about Fed policies. We're talking politics. Those two things are different. The Fed is not elected. In election years, the correlation between the Fed and the politics we covered a little while ago is they do not want to interfere. So instead, they are not as active. So the Fed during election years pulls way back. We've only had 2 times that the Fed has made any changes within the months of the election. 2 times ever. And in the years that we've gone in, they've only ever raised rates during an election. Let me pull that up. It was like once or twice. They don't want to raise rates, but they will lower rates. So they'll lower rates in the years coming, but they do not want to do anything that looks like it would be an attack on an incumbent or anything else they want to read. So the Fed during election years and how they work, it's quite interesting. They really do pull back, and they want to stay out of it. They don't want their names to be intermixed with the political landscape. It's probably one of their number one fears, is that they will look like they're supporting or hurting a candidate. So that gives, I think, though, a lot of people a good runway in knowing or understanding what the year might hold. So after a certain point, they know we're probably not going to get any surprises from the Fed. And so we either accept what's happening, right, or not. And everything tends to almost calm down, except for politically. And it's like a silent sleeper that all of a sudden markets just do amazing during election years, even though most people, Main Street wise, are pulling out. They're not. The economy tends to, obviously, it goes, it keeps following trends or not. But when you look at the actual behavior, meaning the individual consumers, how much money they're spending, right, that actually doesn't make a big difference. And this is something I thought was really interesting. We don't tend to see huge swings that are outside the norm, meaning that, all right, if we're in a down market, if we're in a recession, right, well, of course, they're going to act like it is. But if they're in a boom market, it's not. It has more to do with what happens in the elections than the elections have to do with what people do, if that makes sense. So whatever is happening then will dictate the outcome of the election, not the other way around. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you mentioned the stats, AJ. Is that, you said that the recession point, meaning 2 years leading up, does the fact that there was a recession in the actual election year matter at all, or is it all from a couple of years ago?
Yeah, I assume you're throwing out 2020 here. Like, there's like the economic performance in that election year was obviously, we had COVID and everything, so like that's just an outlier.
No, it actually was consistent. So Trump had a recession within 24 months of the election, and he didn't win.
Yeah, once a recession came in Trump's 2 years, it was known he was out. It was done, because it's always happened. It has never, no president has ever survived a recession and been reelected. It's never happened before.
And every president has survived no recession.
I guess where I'm going is, when is the recession? Like, I'm just thinking, like, we've been calling for this recession now. Well, at least Kyle and I. Let's just say there's a recession early part of this year. Does that have any effect, you think, on the election, or is it already, people's minds have already been made up?
Well, this is why people were freaking out about what was called a recession or not. This was one of the big reasons because people said, oh, okay, so let us get this straight, Biden. We have 2 quarters of consecutive down, but now they were coming out and being like, it's not a recession. This time it's different. And that's why everybody was like, wait, what? So now, hold on, you're changing the qualifications. Why? Because they viewed it as political movement. Because if it was true, 100% of the incumbents get kicked out. And so it very much looked like, wait, we had the GDP actually shrunk for 2 consecutive quarters, but now we're trying to make it say that it's not. And we're going to change and define. And so that was why that was such a big deal, was because people were looking at it as this is political theater. But whether it was or not, all that kind of stuff, that can be determined, and why people still argue about it today. Either we're in one right now or not.
So are we saying that if we don't have this recession happen before November, then there's a 100% chance that Biden gets reelected?
Historically
speaking. And if you also say that the 2 quarters of shrinking GDP was not a recession.
Now, here's an important point to that 2 quarters. When we talk about recessions in this respect, because I've been having this discussion with a lot of people over the last week or two, and I went back and looked, the definition of recession in this context is, if you look at a Federal Reserve chart, you'll see these gray bars that indicate a recession. And these gray bars are not defined by 2 quarters of negative GDP. Those gray bars are defined by an organization called the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER. And they're the ones that are tasked with formally saying, are we in a recession? Yes or no? What date did that recession start? What date did that recession end? And that will determine if there's a gray bar and how wide that gray bar is, how long that recession lasted. But here's the interesting thing. In a lot of cases, NBER doesn't meet until months or years after an economic softening to determine if there was a recession, because a lot of times
2008 was like 5 years later when it was formally defined. I want to hit on this point. This is really important, what Jay just stated and made. The definition of a recession many times happens years later, like years later. So we could say in 2 years that it was defined. And I bet you too, depending on the election, that will probably actually make people think about whether we were in one or not. But for all we know, in a year, they could say, nope, it wasn't, or it was. Because it doesn't happen in real time. It's looked back on, and they bring in all of this information. So when we had like 2 shrinking quarters and the Biden administration came out and said, we're not in a recession. First of all, we didn't know that. Nobody knows that, right? And to have an actual qualified.
But in hindsight, I don't feel like anyone's really arguing at this point that was a recession. It's not, because it was like 2 quarters and then that was it. Like it was
a lot of people are arguing that was a recession. And Mauricio,
I just saw, the reason I was going to share this is because I saw the little blurb there, a thin recession line, but that actually was the 2020 recession, not the one. I thought that was that they'd already been considering that a recession. But let me just share the screen again.
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on it, that negative 2 quarters. So if we ignore that really thin bar in 2020, that quick recession during COVID, and we look at the last 2 real recessions, so 2008 and 2001, if we're talking about 2 negative successive quarters of GDP defining a recession, actually that definition didn't hold in either of those recessions. So in 2008, you'll see that gray bar starts in December of 2007. In actuality, 2 quarters of negative GDP was a few months or a few quarters earlier than that. So if 2 quarters of negative GDP was the definition, we'd see that gray bar starting earlier in 2007, not later. And then if you go back to 2001, you obviously see the gray bar there. For anybody that's not looking, there's a gray bar on the chart that's up on the screen. There was a recession in 2001. Nobody disagrees there was a recession in 2001, but we never had 2 successive quarters of negative GDP back in 2001. And so basically we see both sides of it. You don't need 2 quarters to have a recession, and 2 quarters doesn't necessarily mean that there is a recession. And so,
in 2007, no one thought we were in a recession.
Exactly.
No one, like literally national economists and everything were like, yeah, it's as good as it's ever been. They literally didn't understand that we had been in a recession for a year until 3-4 years later. So there's a huge lag indicator on these, and it is more complex than it meets the eye. But one of the reasons is you have to take into account with so many things that we just they can't even get data on. Like it doesn't happen that quick, but also it's a cause and effect, meaning we had this huge contraction that started because of this in 2007. That's when we're going to put the recession. Now, if this didn't happen, they may never qualify it, backdate that, right? If that makes sense, that there is this lagging indicator that they'll actually go back and redefine due to future events. So today, we see this huge GDP growth. Who knows? In 2 years, they could go back and say, no, we were actually in a recession today, even though GDP went up. Because as Jay stated, that's actually happened.
In theory, they could go back and tell us we were in a recession in 2017, and now suddenly these gray bars show up in 2017. Obviously, that's not going to happen. I think we're past that. But in theory, it could.
So basically what you're telling us is that we don't know whether or not this is going to be applicable, because they could go back and they could have said, hey, those 2 quarters back last year, that was a recession, and that's the reason that Biden lost. Or on the other side, we could say there was no recession in the last 2 years, that's why Biden won.
I think if Biden loses, it will be a defining factor in deciding that there was a recession. I really do. I think it'll be a major point brought in to say one of the reasons is because there was actually a recession in there. And because once again, we're talking about outcomes, and what happens, and they look at a lot of things when it comes into this. But you're right, Kyle. I don't think we will know. And so when the election happens, I think that actually tells us more about whether there was a recession or not than what we currently know. Now, whether that's true, I'm simply saying that because it's been true 100% of the time. So
for anybody that's a fan of the term "tail wagging the dog," this is the presidential tail wagging the economic dog.
I thought you were going to go with the history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes.
in this case, statistically, it does.
It does. And so I do want to touch on one thing, because you said we weren't talking about the Fed, but this is an important point, because I know a lot of people believe, and I'm even of this belief, and I think the data does not support me. So maybe I need to start revising my beliefs. But a lot of people
never stopped you before, Jay, when all the data's against you. You know.
Never, 100% confirmation biased. I'm a big fan of confirmation bias. No, but a lot of people have this belief, even economists. And I was reading some articles about how economists have been surveyed, and they have this belief as well, that the Fed tends to take action that will help the incumbent. And all the data that's out there, and I've been repeating this, so I'm guilty of this as well. But all the data that's out there indicates that the Fed basically acts the same, regardless of whether we're in an election year or not. And if you look back at the last 17 election cycles, we've seen rate hikes 8 times out of 17 election cycles. We've seen rate decreases 5 times, and we've seen rates flat 3 times. And so in more cases than not, like almost half the cases, Fed has raised rates in an election year or an election cycle. And raising rates isn't necessarily helping the incumbent. It's just the opposite. It's slowing down the economy. So I think
what time frame is this though, Jay? Is this like, we talking like 6 months before the election, or just like the entire year before the election? Because to AJ's point, like they try not to get involved close around the election.
Yeah, and so this is I don't know for that particular statistic, but if you look just in election years, basically, in going back to, let's say, I have another stat that I wrote down here because I thought it was interesting. If you go back to 1955, since 1955, the federal funds rate has gone up in election years 10 times by an average of 135 basis points, and has gone down 7 times for an average of 140 basis points. That's in an election year. Maybe it's after the election. It doesn't say. I don't have that data if it's like leading up to an election, 2 or 3 months. That said, it is pretty much common knowledge that the Fed is going to avoid any significant moves within a few months of the election to avoid kind of
yeah, but let me throw a wrench. Let me throw in a wrench into your argument, because even the incumbent thing, I mean, you know when you start, I don't want to say cherry picking the data, but like, when was the last time, and I don't know the answer to this, but I think it's happened before, but when was the last time you had an election where you had the incumbent versus a former president, right? So you talk about the incumbent, hey, the Fed, the chairman's really cozy with the president, meets with him all the time. Well, he's also met with Trump.
Rutherford B. Hayes is the answer to your question, by the way.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a uniqueness.
It's almost like a double incumbent right now.
Yeah, so it's like now you need to look at all the data. When does that happen? So now maybe we can only look at one data point instead of all these other data points to make those statistical analysis. So, like I said, it's just something to keep in mind. Everything's when you start looking at that, you can always come up with rationales as to justifying the data. So I don't know. Just threw that out there. I don't know what I'm talking. I'm half dead anyway, so just throwing that out there.
I was going to say, what's everyone's opinion then? So if we had to guess, were we in a recession and those two negative GDP quarters? So use that as a predictor of who's going to win the election. AJ, do you think that was considered a recession or not?
That's a big question.
While you're thinking about it, though, wait a minute. While you're thinking about it, didn't we all agree, or at least I know AJ agreed and Jay and Kyle, didn't we all agree that Biden's probably not going to be running anyway? Didn't we all agree on that anyway? So it doesn't even matter?
That's a whole separate topic. We don't have enough time to cover that one.
I mean, so if Biden doesn't run, would then the incumbent be Trump?
No, there's no incumbent.
He would.
But he kind of is, though. Like
It
he's
is.
kind of
He
like
sort
he's.
of is. So going back to your question, Kyle, I mean, we discussed this on an episode, I think it was last summer. But my argument back then was it was not a recession. And the reason for that argument was really the only big negative economic indicator was GDP, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. But that negative GDP growth could easily be explained away for reasons that weren't, it's a bad economy. And the two big reasons was, one, inventories were through the roof. So companies had bought, COVID had just loosened supply chains. And for the first time, companies could get inventory. And because they were concerned about not getting enough inventory in Q4 of 2021, or 2022, whatever it was that we're talking about, they bought a ton of inventory. And because they bought a ton of inventory in Q4, they didn't buy any inventory in Q1 because they had so much left over. And when they weren't buying inventory, that drops GDP. The second thing was,
All right, so we got it, Jay. So you think Biden's going to win? Mauricio,
I am not saying that.
do you think that was considered a recession or not?
I remember listening to Jay's argument back then on the pod. If you haven't watched that episode, I would encourage you. And I agreed with Jay back then. That seem to make sense. It didn't feel like a recession. And his arguments, I think, were kind of shown to be true, because I think the following quarter, where it was like a banger or something, it was like a great GDP number. So I think the inventories did have something to do with it. And so,
All right, so Mauricio's got another vote for Biden winning. AJ, who do you think?
remember, I said it was going to be, I think I said that Gavin Newsom was going to run against DeSantis, but remember that episode we were doing some predictions. So obviously that's not going to happen, but it could still be Biden stepping aside and Trump being in jail. Then it's like, who's going to be running?
I'm still hoping that neither of them run, and we've got two other probably bad but better choices to choose from.
You and me both, Jay. All right, I guess I got to take the opposite side. So I got to start doing my research to back up why I think it was a recession now. But I'll take that side. I'll take it. I think it was a recession.
How about you, Kyle?
Well, it's interesting because I would have argued, and I didn't realize it was debate so much, that whether or not it was a recession. I thought everyone kind of agreed that it wasn't. So I would have said that it wasn't. But at the same time, I don't think the way things are going, I don't think the incumbent is looking very good to get reelected. So I'll go with AJ then. I'll say they'll backdate that as a recession because the incumbent's not gonna win.
So I don't have it here, so I can't bring it up, but I sent it to you guys in our WhatsApp conversation earlier this week that I thought was interesting when we talk about whether it was a recession or not. It was a graph of basically consumer sentiment, what average Americans think about the economy at different points in time. And it basically went back and it looked at what Americans thought how they thought the economy was doing. And it tracked basically the 5 years across the last 2 election cycles. And what we saw was before the 2016 election, when Obama was in office and he was the incumbent, Democrats thought that the economy was absolutely fantastic. Republicans thought that the economy was absolute crap. You look 2 weeks later at the same survey after the election, after Trump was elected. Obviously, in that 2 weeks, the economy didn't change, but Republicans suddenly thought that the economy was going gangbusters, and Democrats thought the economy was in the toilet. And then you jump forward to 2020 election, and it was the same thing, but the other way. Republicans thought we had a great economy in 2020. Democrats thought it was horrible. Biden gets elected 2 weeks later. Suddenly, Democrats think everything's great. There it is. So for anybody that's looking, there's this. Thanks for putting this up. Here's that graph, and so it's just hilarious that essentially how you think the economy is doing has nothing to do with your personal situation, has nothing to do with any objective opinions. It's basically who you want to win the election, or who you're voting for, what side you're on. That's determining how you think the economy is doing.
Well, hold on, because this data is taking it from the parties, meaning that it's not like they went out and necessarily asked people and then said it is a recession. They asked Republicans or people that identified in that way and then asked it. So like just want to make that distinction that it was sampling those core audiences. And I think that is true. Now, whether the center did or not, I bet you it falls pretty much the same anyways. It's whatever they're leaning. But it shows exactly what you're saying, how polar opposite it is, that has nothing to do with the economy at all. It's just simply who they want in office.
So it's probably safe to say that Republicans would tell you that was a recession about a year ago, and Democrats would say definitely not. So,
or we could just wait to see who wins, and then we'll just backdate it and change it so we can keep our 100% win streak there. 100% predictor.
Are we going with the Michelle Obama Tucker Carlson ticket? Is that what's going on? Is that the final two?
Actually, I would probably pick either one.
I own the domain Tucker 2032. I bought it like 5 years ago. That's how confident I was that he would eventually run. I might be off by 4 years, but
I love that so much that you did that, Jay. That's so awesome.
Might be the best investment you ever made.
Exactly. He's going to retire off it.
All right, let's take a break from politics. Maybe we'll get back to it in a later segment here, but let's move on to AI. We haven't really talked about AI much because it's such a big topic, but we talked previously about automation in real estate. And the next step beyond automation is obviously using AI to replace humans as much as possible. We're still kind of in the beginning stages of seeing how AI can help real estate investors. So, Jay, this is technically your topic, even though you took over the last one. So we'll give you another one. But is this something that we still have time to wait for AI to improve a little bit before we need to jump in, or should we be integrating this like right now?
It's a good question, but I think there's a better question, and I'm going to answer a different question than the one you asked. I really want to talk about, because I think this is more interesting, how AI is likely to impact us as an industry, not necessarily whether we can use it to make our marketing better or write content for us. Because when we talk about AI, we're generally talking about two different things. And I know a lot of people think of AI right now as this thing that we more specifically refer to as generative AI. And so generative AI is basically AI technology that writes stuff for us. It creates content. So we use it to create marketing content. I know people that are writing their newsletters, not me, but I know people that are writing their newsletters using generative AI.
Writing books.
I literally know people that are writing books using generative AI, ChatGPT, and other tools. I know realtors that use AI to write their listings, and chatbots. I mean, everybody has chatbots on their websites right now, and that's AI stuff. And design tools, like if you have Adobe Photoshop, you've probably played with their tools to create images or extend images. It's all really cool stuff, and it makes our lives as real estate investors a whole lot easier. And if anything, it closes the gap between what small investors and big investors can do, because we can all create so much more content so much more easily. But it's really, as far as I'm concerned, it's the most boring side of AI. And I think the bigger side of AI that we need to be considering is not the generative piece, but this thing called discriminative AI or predictive AI, depending on what you want to call it. Those are the two common words. But basically, predictive AI is what's really going to impact the future. And that's the AI technology that allows us to make better decisions. So when you think about predictive AI, think about, for example, Zillow's estimates. So how does Zillow come up with their estimates? They're using AI technology. Basically, they're using tons and tons of data, big data, to estimate what properties are worth. So that's one example. Other examples are there are companies out there that are using AI to do analysis. So they're doing automated underwriting of properties, or they're doing market analysis, or they're analyzing growth trends. Basically, they're using AI to again look at big sets of data, parse that data, and say, this is what the data is telling us, even though if we as humans were looking at that data, we'd be overwhelmed. We're seeing AI do things like personalized experiences. So people go through Zillow right now and they click on a house and they look at it, then they click on another house, they look at it, they click on another house. And Zillow, based on the data, based on what they've done in the past, can predict the types of houses they want. Okay, they always look at 3-bedroom, 2-bath, these types of school zones, all this stuff that, again, might be difficult for us as humans to discern exactly what the trends are, but Zillow can take all of this data and they can say 99% of people that looked at these 3 houses ended up buying a house like this, and so they end up recommending those types of houses. Property management companies, the same way, they're using AI to be predictive and to run their businesses better. So it's this predictive AI that I think is really the thing that's going to impact the industry moving forward. And when you talk about predictive AI, these are the things, again, that rely on huge data sets. And so my thesis in this, my take on what's going to happen with AI over the next couple of years is that the companies that have access to all of this data, and again, it's going to be companies like Redfin and Zillow and Blackstone and BlackRock and Yardi and CoStar and all these other companies that have access to ridiculous amounts of data.
All the social media platforms.
All the social media, absolutely. I mean, everybody that has data, they're going to be the big winners in AI. And I think at the end of the day, what we're going to find is that businesses, what's really valuable isn't the products that they have. There'll be a couple businesses out there with some really popular and highly valuable products, but the biggest winners are going to be the companies that have managed the data and that own the data, because this is going to be the stuff that AI trains on. These are going to be the training data that the models can use to really get really good. And so companies like Yardi are going to go out and they're going to be worth billions or trillions of dollars, because nobody's going to be able to create AI if they don't have access to the data. And so Yardi is going to be able to sell this data that nobody else has for literally billions or trillions of dollars. It's going to be crazy. And then, so that's number one. Number two, the companies that have access to these predictive AI models, the companies that have access to the tools that can do things like automated underwriting really well, they're going to be the ones that end up buying all the properties. So you look at a company like Blackstone that goes out and buys thousands, tens of thousands of houses. There's a reason why they're not buying millions of houses, because they can't underwrite all of those houses. They can't hire enough people that they can cover every single little town in America, because it's just too many houses, too many towns, not enough people to do the work. But when they get really good AI tools that can go out and model 120 million houses in 6 hours, they're basically going to know what every house in this country is worth, and they're going to be able to make offers, reasonable offers, on every house in this country.
But aren't they already pretty much there, though? I guess that's my other argument, is that, like, we see as consumers AI at a certain level, but, you know, Blackstone, like, they've been doing this for years. They've been doing automated underwriting for years. They've been buying, you know, swaths of groups of single families, and based on all these things. If you even in our industry, like, you look at YieldStar is basically, it's the same idea as AI. It's predictive rent, and, you know, they got sued over it. Predictive rent control, basically deciding what the rent prices should be, and adaptively, and they've been around since 2019. So, like, it's easy to say, oh, these big companies they have the advantage and they're going to get there so much more. I would argue, aren't they already there? Don't they? Is their advantage already taken advantage of?
Literally the biggest private equity, the biggest asset manager, and the biggest asset holder owner in the world got there through Aladdin, which is an AI product that they developed clear back in 2014. And that's how they got so big. It was through AI. Aladdin, their flagship project and AI, they then licensed out to other people, and they just kept collecting.
And I would argue up until this point, like that type of software and that type of access to that was just too expensive for the common person. And what's changing now is actually it's going to be the opposite, that the common person is going to get access to these things. Someone like you bring up Yardi and their data, or these other places with data, like they're eventually going to get smart, and they're just going to license out access to it, and it's going to become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and then it's going to be more available to the common person to even the playing field. So I mean, I guess I have a rosier outlook for the common person on that.
So let's take that, and I was going to get to this in a few minutes, but let's take that to its logical conclusion. So let's say Blackstone and AJ and John Doe, the landlord who wants to buy a single house to rent out, let's say they all have access to the same exact tools. And let's say those tools all spit out the exact same thing. You can pay $138,462.18 for this house, and that's the best price you can buy it at. Who's going to end up getting that house? The answer is whoever has the lowest cost of capital.
But that's always been the case. Like you're not changing anything.
What you're changing is that not everybody has access to this data. So John Smith,
but they will. That's what I'm saying. So they will, and so the determining factor won't be the AI. It'll be, once again, your age-old cost of capital, your economies of scale, your things like that will be the determining factor. It won't be the fact that AI, because AI is actually going to even the playing field with Blackstone. Just use an example. We were doing this the other day where we use Red IQ, right? So Red IQ does automated parsing of rent rolls and T12s. And every single year they up their price, and every single year we say, Red IQ, they're getting so expensive, we're going to find another alternative. When we did this 4 years ago and we looked for an alternative of Red IQ, there was none. There was basically nothing. I met with one other person and there wasn't anything there. Fast forward to this year, there was I had meetings set up with no less than 15, all doing that same automated underwriting. They're all using everyone wants to say they're using AI to parse this data, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. There's options that you could do for $100 a month. It's not as good, but there's options there. So all those prices, it's going to become more available, more affordable for the common person. And as you said, I think it's going to be cost of capital is going to be the determining factor and things like that.
Well, here's how I think of it. First of all, every form of leverage has only consolidated. So financial leverage, the internet, technology, right? When the internet came out, we're like, oh, it's bringing it down to the common person. No, corporations just got way bigger. It consolidated even faster and more than we'd ever seen before. And what happens is leverage is a form that some people can use, and they get to use it in a way that others don't, because they have more. And if you have like an actual like leverage point, you got to think of the triangle in the middle that whatever you're leveraging on. And that depends on how much you get out of it. That is the organization. And you pull down on it. If you're leveraging off something small, you get a little, but when it's big, it so outpaces the normal person. So the cost to utilize the service may go down, but the service is not very usable unless you have the data. So the people that have the data get something for cheap, but they get mass amounts out of it. We get something for cheap, we just don't get a lot out of it.
Yeah, and here's along with that. I mean, I think of it this way: every first Tuesday of the month, my business partner on the single family stuff that I do goes to the courthouse steps in this small town in Georgia where we invest in a lot of property, and he tries to bid on foreclosures. And every month we get 1 or 2 or 3 properties from this foreclosure auction, generally with very little competition, because it's a tiny town in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. And I guarantee you Blackstone doesn't have it on their radar. They're not looking at it. Even if they were, they don't have enough data to figure out what these houses are worth. But in 5 years, when all that data is there and Blackstone doesn't need somebody that knows that market, they have a tool that can look at every house in the country. Suddenly we're going to be competing against Blackstone and all these other big companies for those same houses in this tiny little market where those big boys just couldn't play before because they just couldn't get the coverage.
Well, here, let me pose the other side of it. So like our $20 million property that we make an offer on, Why isn't Blackstone offering on that? They have all the same, they have better tools than we do. They have the ability to buy it. Why aren't they buying it?
Because I would argue they can't underwrite every property that's out there listed. They can't. They just don't have the manpower. The tools aren't good enough for them to be able to underwrite every property easily.
We talked to the people who like these companies like Blackstone use for their automated underwriting services, and they could do these properties in 20 minutes. Basically, is what these things claim.
Assuming they have the market data, assuming they have the data like at the street level.
So like a $20 million property in Houston, you don't think they have all that data? What my point is that the big guys, they need the big returns. So they either have to buy large amounts or they have to buy bigger properties. And the reason we stay in that, in that little sweet spot is below the institutional. And once you get above the institutional, it's all institutional buyers. You don't see people syndicating very many $200 million properties, because the Blackstone has the cost of capital to be able to take those down very easily. And that's why you don't see Blackstone coming and buying the $20 million properties, because it's not worth their time to do that. So like, I just don't see it as a huge advantage that's changing anything. I think everyone's going to stay in their lane. It's just going to, make all ships rise.
Yeah, but I mean, it sounds like you agree that at some point it's going to be ubiquitous enough, the technology, that cost of capital is going to be, again, that single determining factor. So we may be getting there from different sides, different angles. We may not agree how we get there, but it sounds like we all agree, or most of us agree, that the big players are going to have a huge advantage thanks to AI. It's not going to be a level the playing field sort of thing. It's going to be the capital is going to rise to the top again.
Right. I would argue that the advantage is just going to become inefficiencies, where these people who have access to the AI automations and be able to cut down their cost of manpower quicker than I am, they're going to get that short advantage. We're going to catch up eventually. But right now you see AI moving so quickly that I see advertisements for AI software services that were $5,000 4 months ago, and similar things are $500. It's just moving so quickly, and everyone wants to jump in and be on the bleeding edge of this, that it's going to take some time, and the people who are out in front of it are going to have a short advantage, but it's eventually everyone's going to catch up. So I think there's money to be made in the short term. It's just, where do we go?
Mauricio, you haven't said anything.
Well, the only thing I was thinking to add to this, because you guys are doing a phenomenal job on this discussion, is just, even though the technology is all there, like the average Joe doesn't have the inclination or the desire to go learn this stuff. Like ChatGPT is out there right now. I know that's not what we're talking about in terms of generative versus predictive, but it's like, just because the technology is out there, it doesn't mean that you even want to do it, have the resource to go learn. Versus these larger corporations, they have a whole team. They can just say, Kyle, you're in charge of learning and mastering this thing. So for the next year, I want you to master and develop whatever we need for our program. Yeah, I'm just saying, the average Joe and Jane doesn't want to take the time or the energy to go learn this stuff. And that's why you had, like, even before with the internet and the people, my old boss and my old law firm never had a computer. There's just, the technology just isn't something they want to take the time to learn or deploy resources until it's too late. So these larger corporations have that advantage because they can put resources into it and learn it, and then like even me, like I know half of it, but I know now, for example, you can actually create software to plug into these things, right? Like even just ChatGPT, we're all just using it on ChatGPT, when you can actually create something and have a plug-in and have somebody who knows what they're doing. But the average Joe and Jane don't have the time or the inclination.
But eventually everyone will get there. Just look at, like, we talked about Zillow before. Zillow is a great example. If you go back far enough, like the only way you got access to the MLS was someone had to go down and look it up physically in an office to get access to the listings. And now literally anyone could roll over and pull out their phone in the morning and get updated on all the properties that are fit their buying criteria. So like eventually it gets there. It's just, we're in the transition period right now.
But here's what I'm going to disagree with. When we say AI, that doesn't mean everybody gets it. So when we say AI, you get ChatGPT. BlackRock gets Aladdin. You don't get that. So AI is not a universally thing that we get. It's not the internet. So The AI is only good as the utilization and the resources that it's pulling from. That's it, nothing else. So what they get is like their own internet, the whole own thing, the whole own world that we don't get. We don't get access to it.
But we will eventually. It's just
No, we won't. You'll never get access to Aladdin, ever.
So, okay. So the Aladdin that was in 2014 that came out.
That's now still being used and a million times bigger.
Right. But my point is that eventually we might be 10 years behind the curve, but eventually technology will get fast enough and easy enough that we will get access to the same resources that the big guys did eventually.
How? The AI is pulling from their resources. You don't get that. So they're not going to give that to you. It's not the internet. So when we I'm building out an AI platform to do and look at our dynamic pricing and rate revenue management. There will not be a mom and pop that will ever get that.
But there will be. But my point is that okay, yes, you'll have a unique data source if that's what you're saying. No one's going to have access to your exact data, but they will have access to other data that is similar. They will be, some because it'll get licensed out. To Jay's point, that's going to be the new currency. The most important thing in the AI age is going to be access to data. So someone like, we keep bringing up Yardi because they're the number one property management platform. They're eventually just going to start selling their data, and they're going to say, hey, anyone who wants access to their data, it costs X amount of dollars. And then there's going to be another source that says, hey, I'll do it cheaper. And then hey, I'll do it cheaper. And it's going to be a race to the bottom eventually. And everyone's going to be able to get access to that data in 10 years, or I don't know the time frame.
Okay, let me pull all this together to wrap this up. I'm going to make a prediction, and it's related to the fact that data is going to be so valuable in the future. My prediction is that in 5 years, all of these tools that we're paying today $25,000 a year for, $20,000 a year for, $10,000 a year for, and there are plenty of them that we're paying that. I'm sure you are too, AJ. They're all going to be close to, if not free. And the reason they're going to be free is because Yardi and Zillow and Red IQ and all these other tools that we pay an exorbitant amount of money for are going to recognize that the data is the most valuable thing, and they're going to be happy to give away the product to gather more data over their competition, because that's where the money is going to be for them. And so my prediction is in a couple of years, we're going to see all these tools start to trend down in cost, and that's going to be good for us.
Well, the Zillow model, right? That's basically what Zillow does, right? They have millions of users that come on and use their platform for free because they don't need that revenue. They charge it on the back end to people who have access to the data, to the agents, to the advertising, to all those different things. So they'll give it to us for free.
Yep. And we're going to see that move downstream in the commercial sector.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that took a different turn. I thought we were going to talk about how AI can improve our, the regular person's business, but maybe we'll have to push that to another topic. I had a whole list of stuff of how AI can improve your business, but shelf that to maybe next week or the week after. We'll see how it goes. All right. That was a nice break. Let's get back to politics. Why don't we? I know Jay's happy about this one. So there was a bit of a debate between members on this pod whether or not we should be talking about the latest Trump judgment, but
which is always the same outcome, by the way, everybody. Jay's like, no. Me and Kyle are like, let's do it.
Let's get into it. But this suit, though, we're not going to talk about when that journalist sues him or anything like that. But this suit was so real estate focused. I feel like we have to talk about it. You can't just avoid it because Trump's name on it. And so for those who are just getting back from their wilderness hunting trip, Trump was found guilty by a New York judge and fined $355 million. This makes Grant Cardone's lawsuit seem reasonable in comparison. So more importantly, he and his sons were banned from running the Trump organization for a few years as well. So there's a lot to unpack with all this, but luckily we have legal counsel on retainer here at Drunk Real Estate. And so Mauricio, why don't you catch us up on why we should be paying attention to this?
First of all, I'm not sure he found guilty. I think he's been found liable, but let's just leave that aside for a second. So I thought this topic was about election interference. Is that what we're talking about, or are we talking about the actual? Is this election interference, or is this about
Hey,
the
take it
actual
however you
judgment?
want to take it.
That's another one. We'll do that one. We'll do that one next week.
When Jay's not here.
When Jay's not here? So I actually skipped all the media stuff and I went straight to the order. Although I just pulled up a picture, by the way, of the judge that did this. And he's like 80 years old or something. He looks like he's about to croak. Arthur Ingron. 75 years old. Anyway, so here's the interesting thing. So this is a pretty regular fraud case in the sense that what Trump was accused of was falsifying his financial statements in order to get higher appraisals on his assets. So it made it look like he was worth more, which allowed him to get more loans at better rates. And basically he's accused of defrauding the banks. That's really what it was. What's interesting about this is that none of the banks lost any money, meaning they all got paid back their loans and all the interest and stuff. So they actually don't have any case in terms of their usual, what we call common law fraud, because one of the elements of fraud is there's got to be damages. And so none of the banks were damaged. But New York has a really broad statute, which is really what this got brought in. The banks didn't come in and sue him. It was actually the Attorney General in New York that came in and sued him under this general statute that basically says, look, if they believe that there's repeated fraud going on in the marketplace, the Attorney General has the right to go in and actually, file these charges. So it was irrelevant whether there was actual damages. They have a public interest to keep making sure people don't commit fraud.
And it was part of her campaign theme was she named Trump by name, that she was going to basically go and get him.
Yeah, and so what ultimately the judge determined after doing there was no jury trial. It was just the judge looking at all the witnesses, and it was like I think an 8-week trial. It was a pretty long trial, but basically he determined that the Trump organization and Trump himself had falsified documents. So they presented documentation to the banks showing a certain level of financial wherewithal, and that turned out to be false, and therefore he was defrauding the banks. Which obviously they denied. They were all saying, I was relying on accountants, I was relying on appraisals. But two quick things that I wanted to discuss here, and then I know you guys have a lot of thoughts on this. So one was just the ridiculous nature, in my opinion, because look, we're involved at the lower levels of we play at such a small level compared to what these guys play at. But the level of due diligence of these parties, I thought was really interesting. So like, this is like Deutsche Bank. We're talking about, a multi tens of $1 billion, I think it was a $25 billion company, but these are like sophisticated parties, right? And you would think that when they're issuing these large loans to these folks, they would be requiring some sort of financials that they could really rely on. And so you would think that they'd be relying on, audited financials or, appraisals, actual appraisals, that an appraiser will go look at a property and do this. But instead, they were just literally relying on the Trump organization's word, because they were required to submit what's called personal statements of financial condition, which are not audited. They're not even the next level down, which is compilations. They're literally called not reviews. They're actually just compilations, meaning I sit down and I say, well, I got to put together my Excel spreadsheet, put my personal financial statement, and I'm just going to put down what I think these things are worth, or I'm going to talk to an appraisal, and whatever that appraiser tells me over the phone, I'm going to put that that information down there. But there's actually no auditing going on, and the banks were very clear, because it's just like our industry. The actual entity that's buying the property, they weren't going to loan the money just on the entity. They were relying on Trump's representations of his net worth and his liquidity and all that stuff, like we do. And it just amazed to me that the bank of that statute wouldn't actually go and actually request either audited financials or something, or actually a written appraisal. Little they would rely on this appraiser, who then later said, I never told him that, because everybody's just, it's just kind of on the honor. It's almost like it's on the honor system. I'm not saying that doesn't mean that they shouldn't, the fraud is right. I'm just saying when you have a huge financial institution just relying on the honor of the borrower to tell you what they're worth, it's almost like those ninja loans back in 07. It's like, whatever you told me was the thing. But ultimately, I know everybody's got their opinions. I just as I was reading this opinion, I just kept going back to this idea that, look, this is not, your non-accredited, unsophisticated investor that's, getting potentially defrauded here. We're talking about highly sophisticated, institutional, publicly traded companies like Deutsche Bank. I mean, that's exactly who it was. Deutsche Bank is on one side of the transaction, and the Trump organization, also not a mom and pop organization, is on the other side of the transaction. As long as they agree on whatever the terms, if Deutsche Bank doesn't want to take audited financials, that's great. And if they want to rely on the word of Trump, that's great. And if Trump ends up, committing fraud and misrepresenting documents, great. They can sue Trump for fraud. And if they lose money, there's a court system for that. the question I always have is like, why is the government coming in? Why is the state of New York interfering with a private transaction between two parties, right? That's really, I think, the larger question.
With a civil lawsuit, not a criminal lawsuit, a civil lawsuit.
Correct, a civil lawsuit. So it's not like they're no. And again, I'm not condoning the action. I'm just saying, if the banks wanted to tighten up their lending standards, they can. If they want to prevent this, they can, request audited financials. Although I was realizing, audited financials maybe just really, I don't know how complicated that is with a huge organization. That just might be, I don't know. But the bank determines what criteria it does to issue the loans, and if their standards are shitty, then that's on them. I just looked at the stock price of Deutsche Bank. Now I understand why they peaked at $112 a share, and now they're at $12 a share. So they've lost 90% of their value, and maybe it's because of their crappy credit committees and making these loans based on, hey, how much are you worth? Okay, cool. He's worth this much. Let's give him a huge loan without actually having more strict standards in there. But at the end of the day, it's between two private parties. I'm going to take that position. Like him or hate him, you have two independent parties. They're very sophisticated. There's no argument here that Deutsche Bank needs to be protected to make sure they don't get taken advantage.
That's also it's just kind of the way it works. I'm sure you've heard of the term agency gold card or Freddie Mac gold card, or it's the idea is basically that it doesn't matter what my net worth is. If I could come in and my net worth could be $100 million, and I go to Freddie Mac and I want to apply for a $20 million loan. By all their net worth requirements and all those things, I pass with flying colors. But Freddie Mac wants to see that I've done business with them previously and that I've taken loans full cycle. So I've paid my loans all the time on time, and then I've closed the property and I've paid them all their money back. And the more you do that, the better terms you get. And it's that dirty little secret that, hey, I have a couple thousand units, but the person that I'm competing with to get a property, they've got 20,000 units. And when they go apply to the same bank that I do, it doesn't matter if my net worth and everything qualifies and I'm great. They've done 100 times more loans with that bank. That bank's going to give them better terms just because of who they are. And I don't know about you, AJ, but the scrutiny that they put me under for my first commercial loan versus the scrutiny that they put the same bank puts me under now is drastically different. It's a relationship based business, and they do a whole credit risk profile. And if you have never done them wrong, they're going to do less due diligence and they're going to give you better terms. It's just kind of the way it works. And someone who is looking in from the outside, they might see a problem with that, but I guess I don't. It's the cost of doing business. I get pissed off. Of course I get mad when I'm competing against someone and they're getting a much better loan term, so they're going to offer more money on a property and I lose out. I'm going to get upset with that, but I understand it. It makes sense. They've done 30 loans with that small bank and I've only done one. And so they're going to put a lower risk profile on them and they're going to give them better terms. I guess I don't see the problem.
I need to take issue with something though. Mauricio said it's a private transaction between two private parties. Mauricio, are you a shareholder in Deutsche Bank?
Definitely not.
Okay, but if you were a shareholder in Deutsche Bank, you'd probably care that there was being fraud perpetrated against them. And so Deutsche Bank is not a private entity. It's a public entity, and there are shareholders, people like you and me and grandma who rely on that bank and the people they do business with not to commit fraud. And here's my issue. My issue is that the fact that and let me step back. The ironic thing is I'm guessing Deutsche Bank, given how lax they were on the documentation they required from Trump, I'm guessing they probably would have been happy with no documentation. I'm guessing they just had kind of a backroom agreement that we're happy to give you these loans, but we have regulators we need to deal with. We have shareholders we need to deal with. So you're going to have to give us something to substantiate those loans. And Trump was like, okay, no problem. I will give you something. If anything, I'm guessing Deutsche Bank was at least as at fault here. Because they did ask for documentation.
They're 100% at fault. Not at least. They're 100% at fault.
No, they're not 100% at fault.
If his credit risk profile was so good that it doesn't even matter what his financials said, then why does it matter? I guess it's an entire thing. It's not like we're dealing with a government a government entity like Fannie or Freddie, who, you know, you have to check every single box in order to get a residential loan. And if you miss one box, you don't get it. Then like they have to do a risk analysis, and that's just one part of their risk analysis. It's not like it's the only thing.
Exactly. They can lend for all reasons. They don't need to actually get appraisals, right? They have shareholders. They can do all their own things. They can do based upon a lot of things. I can get credit because of companies' revenue on a property that I say, I need 10 million to go buy this. And they'll say, all right, here, take 10 million. And this is the problem that I have. It's like, well, if you look at this, there's two problems. If they did it for Trump, they obviously do it for other people. Where are those other people? And why is New York, why are our official, why is the government going after a former president in a private transaction? And you mentioned fraud. Who was hurt? Did they ever not get paid?
Yeah, no. So the argument there, and I know I appreciate that you're getting all riled up. I'm really stoked about this. But the argument was, look, New York is a financial hub. It's in the New York's best interest that this is a transparent market, that everybody does everything according to the rules, and we don't want to be in a marketplace that fraud is common. So we need to put a stop on this fraud because it's been happening over and over again. That's literally the purpose of the statute that we come up with.
Well, and I've heard the argument that, okay, if someone's
they did
going
it during an election year on something that they've known on a former president, which they took up against nobody else except a former president in an election year.
But the argue against that, though, too, is like if someone's going 100 over the speed limit and they don't harm anybody, did they still break the law? So I guess it's like, you know, the whole no harm, no foul. But it was a civil case. To your point, it wasn't like this was a criminal case. I take issue in that, okay, if he did something criminal, like something against the law, try and take it up in criminal court then. But the problem is they didn't have a strong enough case to take it to criminal court, so they went the civil route. It's
unprecedented alone, not because it's an ex-president, in the transaction itself, meaning taking up a civil case in this thing. So the idea that this isn't due to the election is so baffling to me that it's like, you can't even say that and be serious about it. Like, that's not true. It's unprecedented. They don't do this. And then, but then plus the timing, everything else like that. So if anyone thinks that it's not due to the election, you're on.
Well, Mauricio, here's my question. What was the fraud? What did he do that they said was fraudulent?
He made representations, financial representations to the banks that were false, which then induced the banks.
So why were they false? Who determined they were false?
Because they were incorrect.
So no. So the basic what I read was the basically inflated assets. Who determines what the value of an asset is?
You have expert opinions. I mean, obviously on property, it's a cap rate. So here, I'll give you a very specific example, which I thought was, again, more towards the Deutsche Bank's, risk criteria. But literally, they didn't get, like, for example, an appraisal on a property. That's what you would usually get, right? You would go and get an actual appraisal. A firm would sign and say, look, this is worth some XYZ based typically on the market cap rate at the time.
Wasn't required, though.
Right. So it wasn't required. So what was required was just a financial statement. It's almost like I'm submitting my financial to you and I'm certifying to you that these are accurate and correct, is what they're saying to the bank. And the bank was very clear that said we would never have loaned this money to these folks if there wasn't a personal guarantee from Trump, because these assets weren't in and of itself going to cut it. They had to rely on the unconditional, unequivocal personal guarantee of Trump, who made the representations of this is what he was worth, this is how much cash flow he had, this is how much liquidity he has. And then, that these were always, there was a sign from the CFO that said these are true and accurate statements, and that's what they relied on.
So what's the going cap? What's the cap rate in New York right now?
So that's not so that's the point. So if you looked at the evidence in the trial, and again, I hold Deutsche Bank here as much liable as Trump, both of them. But if you look at the evidence in trial, apparently on Trump's financial statement, he said, I am valuing these properties based on a cap rate that was determined talking to a particular appraiser in the market who is an expert. That appraiser then took the stand and said, nope, I never talked to Trump. I never said those things. So it was basically Trump saying this is where the data came from and lying about that. There was also the situation where his Manhattan penthouse, he lied about the size of his penthouse and then took a per square foot value multiplied by the square feet, lied about how many square feet it was. So it basically gave a higher valuation. And so I don't think he ever argued that he didn't know the size of his penthouse. He just lied about the size.
The main point, though, is that there are already statutes on the books, legal remedies for Deutsche Bank to go after Trump for making these fraud statements. I'm not saying he shouldn't be held liable. I'm just saying Deutsche Bank's the one that should go after him and say, hey, look, you made these false statements to me. I relied on these statements and I've been damaged, or there's a class action lawsuit because now who knows who else has been damaged. And so an attorney, but it's all in the private. It all should be kept in the private sphere.
Let me make my point about cap rates though. So like he made it based off of a cap rate. What's the cap rate in Albuquerque, New Mexico right now? How do you know that? It's not like the government. It's not like the government has a book of, okay, these are the accepted cap rates that you can use. It's basic. It's just what the market's willing to pay, and it's your own determination. You could say, who's an expert. Like, how do you determine what an expert in cap rates are? You could go to your point. You can go to appraiser, or I would say a broker is a better example of what the cap rates are going. But if you take, let's say, a property that makes $10 million a year, and you say, hey, I go to Jay, and Jay says, hell, this is a 6 cap rate here. And I go to AJ and I say, hey, what do you think the cap rate is in this area? He says it's a 5 cap rate. Well, Jay, based on that, the property is evaluated at $200 million. AJ, or so the other way around, Jay's is $166 million and AJ's is $200 million. So now all of a sudden we're $40 million difference on just the cap rate.
But you go to the bank and you say, the value is somewhere between 166 and 200 million because AJ told me this and Jay told me that. And the bank says, okay, great.
They don't ask for a range. They don't. I've filled out these statements. You put a statement.
It doesn't matter. So fine. You say it's worth 200 million because AJ told you that. And then you go to the bank and you say that and they say, okay, great. Well, what happens when the bank finds out that AJ didn't really say that? And you lied on your statement?
I don't know about you, AJ, but they have never once asked us where we got the cap rate. They ask for your statement of assets of what you own. You give them the spreadsheet. You show them how you determine that value. You use a cap rate analysis. You put in a cap rate of what you believe the market rate is, and sometimes they change it, sometimes they don't. And most of the time they look at it and they say that seems reasonable.
Oh, and then we'll argue it too. By the way, we get banks to change it all the time because we're like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's not true. I have an offer right here, and it's whatever we say.
Am I so out of the loop are the banks no longer requiring appraisals on these properties?
But see, guess what the appraisers do? We come to the appraiser comes to us, and I'm like, oh, here's an offer, and they're like, okay, that's what it is.
And Mauricio, when they ask so we have 4 people sign on our loan, right? And when they ask for a personal financial statement, I have one guy that signs on loans with us. He's got 100 commercial properties. To get a full appraisal on a commercial property is thousands of dollars. So you're going to say, hey, in order for you to apply for this loan, you need to get an appraisal on every single one of those 100 properties that you own? No, they have their own team that just goes in and they look at the property. They probably access the CoStar. They have probably access to all these things. And they say, is that reasonable? Is that reasonable? Is that reasonable? Is that reasonable? And that's on them. Like, that's not me committing fraud because I picked this cap rate. Like, yes, if I had 100.
What if that person that signs on our loan says, I got a formal appraisal and all the values that I'm providing in this financial statement that I'm signing my name to came from formal appraisals, but then they didn't. That's the issue. The issue is that he was saying that he was relying on professional
bank fraud. You've committed bank fraud, and the bank can come after you for damages. Yeah, as I was reading, and again, these are the judges, and these are the facts that he determined were correct. Because obviously there were facts on both sides, and he was the determiner of facts, so he determined which facts he believed were true. But yeah, I was reading this, I'm like, holy crap, this is really egregious, and this, that, the other. But then the bigger issue is just, is this the place of New York to interfere with this, or is this just the place of the banking industry?
What's terrifying to me is because it's not that he didn't do something wrong. That does nothing to do with it. And 2, we can argue about values, all that kind of stuff, which is actually supposed to take place. That should all happen, take place, everything like that. I don't even care though. Let's say he did something wrong. And I think he did. So let's say it was totally made up, whatever it is. This is still a witch hunt and it's still unprecedented and it should never be taking place. And I think that it is terrifying to see that we now have the government doing this to a formal presidential candidate in a way that they've never done it to anybody else.
Well, you say a government, it's basically 2 people, right? It's It's someone who ran on the platform that they were going to go after Trump, and so they went through the law and they figured out, hey, how can we get him? And then it's one judge. It's not like he stood up there with a jury of 12 of his peers, and they had judgment on him. This is one judge.
So I don't know the veracity. I don't know if this is true or not, but the what I read was that he had the right to a jury trial, but he did not ask for a jury trial. His attorney made a mistake, didn't check the box that asked for a jury trial, and that is the reason why he didn't go in front of a jury of his peers.
I didn't hear that, and I also thought it was one of the things of.
No, I don't actually. I can find it because I got it right here. No, I saw the reference to that, and the judge was citing some reason why he didn't get a jury trial. So that's actually, I was going to bring that up too.
Right, and that's one of the things of civil versus criminal proceedings is they don't like. It's much harder to get a jury trial, and I feel like that was another reason that they went the civil route instead of the criminal.
And this is, I think, why I just get worked up about it, because it's not that Trump's right or wrong, but this is such a gross, like, this is stuff you see in third world countries. It really is. That you have court systems that are finding and attacking in election years presidential candidates, which the judge are outspokenly against.
And they're not even hiding it either. Like the laws that they play, like what's it? I don't even know how to pronounce. It's disgorge. Is that how you pronounce it, Mauricio?
Yeah, you disgorge profits or unearned, ill-earned gains.
It rarely happens. It rarely happens that they apply this, disgorgement. But they applied it to him, and they basically what it says is that because he did this at the beginning, so he misstated his assets, that means that every dollar he made after that is ill-gotten gains, and he has to pay it all back. So like I think it was one property or like that he made $126 million. So they took it all back. They said every single dollar that you made off that is ill-gotten gains. That's what you're getting fined for. And so like it was just, they took it to such extreme.
Yeah, it's such an absurd abuse of power that it honestly scares me. It's shocking.
Yeah, I personally don't give a crap. If he broke the law, which he did, let him get in trouble. If Biden broke the law, let him get thrown in jail. If Hunter Biden broke the law, let him, if Hillary did, lock her up. I don't give a shit. I mean,
Biden can't because he doesn't have the mental capacity to get in trouble for the same thing.
I guess where I differ with you on there, Jay, is that if he broke the law here and the reasoning that they say he broke the law, the majority of it, now he might have taken it to extreme. And if we had hundreds of properties, there'll be, I'm sure there will be an outlier where, okay, we made a mistake here and got the square footage wrong on that one too, or whatever, if you want to cherry pick. But the point is the general practice of what he did is pretty common in commercial real estate. Not the extremes of the cherry picked ones that they chose to put on trial, but the general practice of what he did of trying to maximize loan proceeds to try and get the best insurance quotes that you can. There's literally insurance brokers and mortgage brokers that their job is to say, hey, fill it out this way, do it this way, because that will maximize your proceeds. It's an entire industry on both of those sides. So I guess my point is that where do you draw the line here? Like of who is a criminal, I guess, in this case, because I feel like if you're going to go after Trump, you're going to have to go after thousands and thousands of other people who did similar things.
great. I agree. Go after them all.
Yeah, but that's not the concern, though. I think I echo AJ's concern, which is my concern is more that, let's just say Trump now wins the election this year, and then the following year, Michelle Obama wants to run, and then that becomes the Republicans now do a witch hunt on Obama because they don't want her to run, and so they start doing all kinds of investigations and trying to get her on some deal that happened 1,000 years ago. And it's the politicization of these acts versus, if they want to go after and implement this law, great, implement it to everyone. Don't start cherry picking and trying to get people off. It's the same thing with the Kennedy thing with not giving them him Secret Service protection. I mean it's the same thing. It's like, why are you not giving him a Secret Service protection? Now he's got to pay that out of his own pocket, which drains his war chest, which makes it harder and harder for him to compete. So it's just all these politicalizations of all of these issues.
Yeah, we got to wrap this. I guess it hits home, and I hate defending Trump all the time because like I feel like I defend the real estate practice in general. And I guess like if I go into a property and I decide, okay, I'm going to replace all the floors, and that's a CapEx item that doesn't fall on my income sheet. I put that below the line, so it doesn't consider an income. And when I'm calculating the value of a property, I shouldn't include that. And all of a sudden, a judge who has no real estate experience looks in and says, "Well, that was an expense that should be on your income property. Your property was overvalued." Like to me, you got to draw the line somewhere, and I feel like it wasn't, to Mauricio's point, it wasn't their place to step in and determine what's where the line is for overvaluing properties. And it was a civil case, and what should have been a civil case between the banks and Trump, not between them. So anybody else want to make a final point, or should we wrap this up?
No, we've gone longer than we thought. Does this mean we get to skip the top 10 because we've gone a little bit long in the tooth here?
Hell no.
Mauricio's so excited.
No, I got a fun top 10 if you want to move on.
I want to see Deutsche Bank split that fine with them or pay it triple the fine, because I have no problem with what happened to Trump, but Deutsche Bank was even more responsible for, because this was their shareholders that they defrauded. These are mom and pops who are buying shares in Deutsche Bank in their retirement accounts, and Deutsche Bank is saying that they're doing this underwriting of Trump and whoever else. I'm not saying Trump here specifically, of all these people, and they're obviously not doing serious underwriting. And so as far as I'm concerned, they're the bigger, there was a bigger, the egregiousness on their part was bigger than it was on Trump's, although again, he did a bunch of lying as well. So I don't let him off the hook.
Well, then let them sue him civilly, and we could deal with that. That's another option. Okay. All right, I'll do a quick top 10 then. I was going to do top 10, but let's do top 5. So these are top 5. I guess I thought we were going to talk a little bit more about AI, things that you can actually use. But so here's the top 10 AI resources that people use. So obviously number one's ChatGPT, has 14.6 billion visits. But then let's go down the list, and some of these ones that people might not have heard of and they could use themselves. So it's informative.
Bing's got to be number 2.
The Microsoft.
Yeah.
Well, that just has ChatGPT built in.
Is that right?
Pretty sure. All right. Number 2 is called Character AI. It allows users to find and create characters to interact with. And that actually has 3.8 billion visits. I'd never even heard of it. Number 3 is Quillbot. It's an online writing assistant. I'm assuming that's what all the college kids use to fake their exams and write their papers. So that's got 1.1 billion visits. Midjourney, most people have heard about that. That's an AI-powered image generator, 500 million visits. Hugging Face allows users to build, train, and deploy models. It has 316 million visits. Then we have Bard, that's just Google's version of ChatGPT.
That's what I meant. Sorry, I meant Bard, not Bing. So that's what I meant. It was Bard.
Yeah,
sorry.
Bard. And they're catching up pretty quickly, actually. So they had 241.6 million visits just in the last 6 months. And then there's Novel AI. It's a writing assistant for storytelling, and so that's if you are trying to write your book there, Mauricio. Novel AI would help you out. CapCut. A lot of people using those these days. Designs images, edit, generate videos. So CapCut's like the number one thing on Instagram. So if you're an Instagram person, check out CapCut. And the other ones after that.
So Bing, really I was reading here, I meant to say Bard, but it says here that the new Bing runs on next generation OpenAI that's more powerful than ChatGPT. That's interesting.
Okay, so I guess that hasn't got the visit count yet up to make the top 10. Number 9's a not safe for work one about generating characters to interact with. So there's still, that industry is still alive and well, and any new technology, the not safe for work industry will take advantage of that as well. So, all right, so I told you I went up and we visited Ashley Care up in the middle of nowhere. And so there wasn't much, you couldn't really go to the bars or anything. So we spent some nights just drinking and playing games. And I wanted to get your guys' opinion. What is your late night drinking fun activity that you do? So we did karaoke, we played cards, we did board games and drinking games. So of those options, what's your late night activity, AJ?
I have a Monopoly board with all my properties. So I play my own Monopoly. I'm dead serious. It has all my properties across the whole thing. All the cards are tailored to our business and everything else. So I play Monopoly with my assets and with the kids. So
How much do you get for pass and go?
you get $200. It's so the same. The money though is also our money, but we use the same rules so the kids understand.
Which of your properties is Boardwalk and Park Place?
Boardwalk and Park Place are our two in Boise. I'll take a picture of it. I'll send it to you guys. It's really cool.
We'll
It's
pull it
really
up on
cool.
screen for the intro next episode.
That would be a great gambling game. You play like Monopoly, but with real properties and real money. And if you lose, you actually lose those properties to the person that won.
You actually lose the properties, transfer the deeds. Yeah.
Isn't that just real life? That works.
Yeah, but this way you don't have to leave your home.
Way more risky.
All right, Jay, what would be your choice? Late night drinking game.
These days, just I want to watch a movie and go to sleep. Late night drinking game. I can't think of any.
In that entire time that AJ was talking, so you've
What were my options? What were my options?
Karaoke, card games, board games, your traditional drinking games with like pong balls and stuff like that. What's your choice?
So when I was younger, I had 4 friends and I that every Tuesday night we would go out to dinner. We would drink a ridiculous amount and we would come back and we would play no limit poker, $5,000 to $10,000 buy-in, completely wasted.
There you go. That's a fun one. Do you think net? Do you think you came out ahead on that?
It was probably pretty close. There was certainly one of us that came out ahead all the time, one of us that came out behind all the time. The other 3 were probably bouncing it back and forth. But yeah, those were the good old days. I remember we'd come home and Carol, my wife, would like play hostess and bring us lots of food and laugh at us.
Good old days. Mauricio, what's your go-to?
You lost me at late night.
All right. If you're staying home and drinking instead of going out,
I
to
would
a
do the
bar.
drinking games. Back in the day, I'd do drinking games. I don't like playing card. I mean, unless it's poker, I guess you could. I'll go with Jay. I'd much rather do that. Do the poker times, but I don't do the board games or the card games or those things. I would just do a drinking game. But I do the poker as a fellow poker enthusiast. But like I said, I haven't seen late night unless I'm late flying back home from a trip or something. I don't even know what late night means.
So normally I would say drinking games. That's my go-to. I like it. We literally played 2 hours. Me and Daryl were throwing a ping pong ball off of the cabinet, trying to get in a cup across the table. But I had a lot of fun doing karaoke too. Karaoke is great. And karaoke is one of those things you expect if someone has a karaoke machine in their house that they would be like very good at karaoke. But everyone just loves karaoke irrelevant whether you're good or not at karaoke. It's just a fun time. So I had a lot of fun doing karaoke. So anyone wants to do karaoke with me, send me a message. I'll come and do drinking and karaoke with them. All right. Let's finish this off with some plugs. AJ, you got anything?
Plugs newsletter. I think I might have mentioned that one last week, but I'm sticking to it. Our newsletter, you can go to our
It's just that good. You got to keep plugging it. It's just so good. Mauricio, what do you got?
I'm still on Instagram. I found this Instagram thing at Mauricio Raould. But no, I'm going to keep plugging my book that's coming out in a couple of weeks, Legal Strategies for Everyone. Maybe next time I come on, we'll do a couple giveaways with signed copies for people. The value of the book drops dramatically when I sign it, but by the time I come back, it should be out the next time I see you guys.
So you'll be able to hold it up and we'll be able to look at it.
Yes.
We could critique your picture on the front. What is it? Can you give us a sneak preview? Is it a picture of your face or what's on the front of it?
No, it's not. I can share. I can screen share it. But
all right, Jay, give me a plug.
Conference Connect. Go check out Conference Connect. Same as last week. Let's see. Ooh, it's been a really bad 6 weeks. I've had 3 angel investments, 3 tech startup investments go under, but I will plug the shirt that I'm wearing right here. Company Anomalo, friend of mine's company. I'm an investor. Just did their Series B $33 million raise. So if you need some AI technology for your big data business, go check out Anomalo.
Good luck to that. Mauricio's showing us a cover. Oh, classic. Nice classic cover. Straight lines, blue. Perfect. Love it. Sorry, that was my description for anyone who's not watching. Yeah, I second Conference Connect. Go check out Conference Connect. Give us some feedback. See what you like, what you don't like. Hit us with some comments because we'd love to improve it, make it great for everybody. And then not necessarily a plug, but just a shout out to my buddy James Daynard. He sent a hat to me through Ashley Care. Pretty funny hat. It says DTF, which stands for Down to Flip. He's a big house flipping guy. So shout out to James. Love you, buddy. All right. I don't know anyone else, but I'll plug our glass here, bar down glass. My drink is gone. Gotta hit the head. Most of you except for Mauricio. Mauricio, you're gone next week.
I'll be down in my home country of Chile.
Oh, you're all over the place. You're up in my home country, Canada. Now you're going to Chile. Well, for everyone else, I will see you next Tuesday.